stories to be told, treasures to be found, silver and gold, dollars and pounds, never worth more than the stories of a town.
Tanunda is the hub of the Barossa Valley. It's surrounded by vineyards and wineries, some of which take grapes from the oldest vines in the country. Tanunda is an Aboriginal word meaning watering hole, strangely appropriate given the amount of wine that's produced in the area. But the remarkable story of Tanunda starts in East Central Europe, in Prussia, under the reign of King Friedrich Wilhelm III. It appeared to the Lutherans that the king's aim was to eliminate their church. In 1830, freedom of worship was withdrawn. The Reformed Church of John Calvin was to be the only religion for the people of Brandenburg Silesia. A pastor by the name of August Carvel looked to guide his congregation to a new place where they could worship as they chose. Carvel's search led him to a man by the name of George Fife Angus. He was a British merchant banker and he was also chairman of the South Australian Company, which had large landholdings throughout South Australia. He combined financial, philanthropic and religious zeal to all his operations. And in 1836, he had great sympathy for Carvel and his followers. So in late 1838, 4 ships arrived in Port Adelaide, full of devout, hard-working, thrifty Silesians, led by Carvel. Angus leased some small tracts of fertile land in the Barossa to the Prussian Lutheran families, and so began the community which lasts to this day. 2 small townships developed, Bethany and a village called Langmeil, but nestled between the two emerged the town of Tanunda. While Bethany retains its early German influences, Tanunda quickly established itself as the main service centre for the whole district. The agricultural mix early on reflected the early settlers' preference to spread the risk. The rich soil of the Barossa provided orchards, vegetable gardens and grazing country. These early settlements quickly became self-sufficient. They had no choice. The journey to Adelaide in those days was long and arduous. This is Goat Square, known as the Ziegenhart. Charles Flaxman, who laid out the town, made provision for this square as a meeting place for the exchange of goods and all the locally grown produce. Charles took the liberty of naming all the streets that met here at the square after his 7 children. John, Samuel, Elizabeth, Ellen, Maria, Jane. Any more kids and he would have had to design a new town. Then grapevines were added to the long list of fruit and vegetables that thrived in the fields around the town. By the 1860s, a huge transformation was taking place as wine became the main livelihood in the region. But Tanunda is a very traditional place, and that self-sufficiency is evident here today at the Apex Bakery.
My ancestry ship goes back to Christian Feckner. He arrived in Port Adelaide in 1844. This is a converted old house, one of the first 10 buildings in the town. So we're trying to tell people that we're more traditional. It's a Barossa style of it's same as what the Shiraz grapes become. And they pop in and they think, well, where's your Schwarzbrot and your Ryebrot? I said, well, we don't have to make that here because we've got far better ingredients. Oh, nothing's better than German flour. And the German rye flour to me is like a grass, it's a weed. You can't grow wheat over there.
There's much debate about where and who planted the first vines in the Barossa. The early immigrant Germans were subsistence farmers, and many planted vines for their own purposes before the proper vineyards were developed. The Langmeil winery is home to an original 1840s Shiraz vineyard, which is being lovingly restored. The vines nearly fell victim to a government tidy-up in the 1980s. Chris Bitter was one of those who came to the rescue.
This place was not for sale. It was simply a very derelict set of buildings and a vineyard that on first appearances looked like most of it had been pulled out because in the mid-1800s the government of South Australia were paying grape growers bounties to pull out vines, unwanted varieties, and a lot of vineyard sort of went under the hammer, if you like, and were pulled out. This particular vineyard survived that period because a local woman who lived just across the river realised that this was probably one of the oldest remaining Shiraz vineyards in the Barossa, and she lobbied the local council to have it heritage listed, and it was saved. You wish your life away to a certain extent. You'll have a good vintage and you'll think, I can't wait till 2008 to drink this, and it's a bit of a problem really. It's one of the things that it sort of makes your life sort of whiz past your eyes fairly quickly.
Families with large financial resources soon established wineries, buying up the local product, laying the foundations for the wine industry as we know it today. Names such as Seppelt, Penfolds, Gramps, Jacobs, Salters and Tolley soon dominated the industry, while the smaller growers supplied them with their grapes, grown on family holdings. This is Chateau Tanunda. When it was built in 1890, it was South Australia's largest building, an eclectic mix between Bavarian manor and French chateau, set quite surprisingly for the unsuspecting visitor in the middle of a rural valley in South Australia. It was even bigger than the State Parliament building, but knowing Parliament, that wasn't to last for long. Its great achievement was that it could store more than 5 million litres of wine, and it wasn't only wine that flowed from these barrels, and brandy as well. Australia was suddenly thrust onto the European wine market in the 1870s as the impact of the phylloxera epidemic took hold. Chateau Tanunda became the biggest wine production centre in the Southern Hemisphere. The local growers benefited hugely from this insatiable demand, the only proviso being that they had to commit all their grapes for 10 years to the chateau. In a little over 100 years, the chateau has only changed hands twice, and its alma mater reads like a who's who of the Australian wine industry, many of whom have worked here over the years. Both world wars proved to be very difficult times for the Australian-born Germans. Before the First World War, almost 10% of the South Australian population were German-born Australians. They were greatly respected for their enormous contribution to the emerging colony and state. Anti-German prejudice was rampant in South Australia, as it was in the rest of the country. Place names were changed, Lutheran schools were closed, and the language was forbidden. Any connection, even remotely Germanic, seemed to indicate you were fighting for the Kaiser. It's a sad irony. Of the 8 men who didn't return from the First World War here in Tanunda, 6 had German names and heritage. They were fighting to save the freedom they'd found here in Australia.
Scott the Gates. Welcome to the Kegelbahn.
Hey.
Right. Scott, come on in.
Hey.
Now,
Look at this.
this is the Kegelbahn.
Unreal.
Well done, sir.
What did you score there?
12. 12 leaving just 2 pins out of the 9.
How do you score the game?
The scoring is quite incredible, where in 10 pin you knock everything down, you get 10 points. Here, 9 pins is 24 points. 8 pins, 30. But if you knock down 8 pins and knock down the king pin as well, it only scores 18. But if you leave the red king pin, it's still 8 pins, but it will score you 30. The whole lot down will score you 24. The front pin only will score you 60. 3 through the middle this way scores you 6. And 3 that way, standing, scores you 15.
I'm glad you know what you're doing.
It's easy after 30 years.
Yeah. The Tanunda Kegel Club is now nearly 150 years old and has been recognised by the National Trust as an historic landmark. Which way's that going? Hey, not bad. All right, so what's the score?
I think we'll give you 5 for that.
Generous.
Not bad for a beginner.
But it's much more than that. It's a living icon, an authentic tradition in this great Australian icon town.